We accept the minutes of May 9th. And I will second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the minutes of May 9th. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We try and check them right through.
Wow.
No.
I thought it was going to be late for my next function.
We'll get you right on there.
Good news. As compared to the other towns that I'm going to asking them for money, we already have an agreement in place for Melissa's position. The other good news is, Melissa's been here. Well, the other towns got a full-time deputy. We just haven't been able to keep someone there where you've had a pretty steady person. I was hoping Melissa could be here tonight, but in many ways I'm responsible for her not being here. She's actually in Wilmington to take her cat to the vet to get fixed because her previous cat, she was dog sitting for me and my dog killed her cat. So, so I figured it was the right thing to do to take care of all the care. So that's why she's not here tonight. But I wanted to let you know that she recently took and passed her national EMT certification, which is one of the things that she realized, Tom Carter realized, Melissa, because she was out and about, was responding to a lot of calls and felt that she could use the training.
Yeah.
And we funded it. And if you want to pay me back, feel free, but this is my intent. But so the other thing that we need to start thinking about is the federal funding ends in September. Because the agreement we got in place, we're funded through that next year. We continue to do what we're doing. But we really need to start to think about beyond the end of that fourth year. So when you're doing your budget for the 2013-2014 budget year, is what are we going to do? Do you think there's been a benefit to having Melissa here in town? I think if you really look at all aspects of it, that it has been very beneficial for funding to have Melissa here. And I tell you that initially, I remember when we spoke 2 years ago about this, one of the questions was, well, will she move to town? I spoke, well, I'm happy living where I'm living. It didn't take her long before she fell in love with Putney, and she's moved here, her kids are in school here. And I think that's worked out very well for all of us that she's here. You know, I can tell you when she goes on vacation, people will call our office to make a complaint, and we say, well, when Melissa's on vacation, we can, you know, transfer your sick leave, have someone else respond. They're like, no, we'll wait till she gets back. And she comes out at night, people call on her cell phone, and that's what we wanted. We wanted that connection. And hopefully the town of Putney sees that and wants that to continue. I have no intention at this point of pulling Melissa out of that position. I think she's very happy here doing what she's doing. We jokingly say in the office that Melissa can't get out of bed in the morning without getting to something, just because of her nature. She follows through on every little thing. She, I mean, some of the examples, she did what we call a welfare check. Someone calls, I haven't heard from my elderly parents in a while. And when she followed up, she found that they had been the victims of embezzlement. The visiting care person was taking money out of their accounts, and they were literally too embarrassed to report it, didn't know who to report it to. She followed up and got a conviction.
That was the woman over in Townsend, right?
No, right here in Putney.
No, the woman who got convicted was Townsend. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
We also had a theft from the jewelry place. That actually went federal and became Melissa's first federal conviction. The case was so strong that the letter we got from the U.S. attorney was they didn't have to do any follow-up investigation because Melissa had been so thorough. And that's very telling about the quality of work that she does. So that's all I want to do is just give you an update. Where the other towns I'm going in to present contracts, we already have an agreement in place that I think has worked. But it is a discussion that we're going to have to start having probably after September, October, when we start doing the preliminary work on town budgets.
No, what happens, you said the funding runs out in September?
the funding runs out, the federal grant runs out in September, and then you've been paying $20,000
$20,000 a year.
to help offset that fourth year, to include Melissa's salary, the car, and that's, you've sort of been paying ahead, and so she'll be here for that
So
fourth
we're-
year.
we're-
We're looking the fifth year and beyond.
So right after the, so she's
Right, so
the
the remaining 9 months to fiscal
June
year
30th
were-
of 2014 would be the, is that correct?
It'll actually be a little beyond that, it'll actually be September of
September.
2013, right, 12, 15, 14.
14.
Right, so then we gotta start looking at,
Figure out the true cost of what it would
Right.
cost to
yep, look at,
create a position somehow that works for everybody.
because I did not look, I don't know what you received for like, traffic ticket revenue. I imagine because she's here full-time, it's been up on average over the last few years. I say that I believe that
It was
to be
up
good.
until, just because I think she was involved with so many of that criminal stuff, shit, that took her off the traffic details in the last 6 months, but generally, yeah, it was a
And-
good increase and it stayed pretty
And that's,
steady.
and that's the other thing, I think if you were to look at Putney's crime statistics, you'd be like, oh my God, we've had a crime wave in Putney for 3 years. I think it's actually those crimes are already occurring, where people started knowing that they had someone that they could report it to, the little things that they normally wouldn't call in about, knowing that someone was gonna follow up. And I remember talking about that we knew that that was a possibility. So, again, you may not see as much traffic, but you know that it's because she's doing all that other thing that leads to better quality of life in your community. So,
It's good. I have to say, I mean, Melissa really, when you talk about community policing, she is just the ideal
she's great.
personality for it
Yeah.
because
She works well
gets,
very well.
she's approachable, there's no heavy duty, kind of attitude thing going on, everyone talks to her, it's
Yeah,
really
and
been successful.
and I never hear Melissa complaining about the community.
Right.
Not at all. Everyone that she interacts with, it's always positive. Yeah, I think it's just the nature of her personality. I don't know what your sense is from talking to the community, but when I talk to people from Putney, my sense is that if we were to pull Melissa out of here, we'd have a riot on our hands. They'd come to love having Melissa around, so.
What's the cost of having Melissa here with all the expenses? Mid-50s, low 60s?
Probably
Is that-
mid-50s.
Yeah.
If you take in her salary, fringe benefits, the car, which we would average out over a year, fuel. I wouldn't build in overtime because most of the overtime comes through grants. It's not billed to the town. There were special events that the town wanted her at.
That would be different,
That would be
yeah.
different. So I'm guessing probably low 50s.
And what's your typical contract with other towns of our size? I mean, what were we?
I'd like to say there is a typical.
Yeah.
Paying around 20.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I mean, I'm wondering what the difference between having Melissa and not having
I
Melissa
can tell you,
is.
you'd be saving money. The reason I say that, for example, my largest contract other than these grant-funded ones is Jamaica. And that's $25,000 a year, which breaks down to about 45 hours a month. So if you were to
Not a lot.
Right, it's not a lot. And so by doing the full-time position, you're gonna pay maybe twice that much, but you're getting 4 times as many hours.
Right.
Plus grant time and the other things that go along with that. Again, you're more likely to see a higher revenue from tickets.
Right.
But that always gets to the point of diminishing returns.
Mhm.
If
Right.
people know that there's enforcement, they're gonna do what we want them to do,
Right.
slow down, obey the laws.
Right.
So it'll go
That
up.
speed trap in front of the school is gonna work forever.
Yeah.
And people are never gonna slow down.
Community, the village of Newfane contracts with me, and right there in the center of town, and they average, again, that's only for traffic enforcement, and we average less than a ticket an hour, and they're getting a 4-to-1 return on their money.
Hmm.
And I can't agree with this calling Newfane Village a speed trap. If there's no traffic, my guys aren't out there. They'll go out and sit there for the day, no traffic, we'll move on to someplace else, because the idea for them to be there is to slow cars down. So, I think if you looked at it with what you're getting for the number of hours, the quality of service that you're getting, the offset, your ticket revenue, your tax cost, probably less than half, probably close to 20 to 24,000.
20 something.
If you're paying, looking at that from that aspect, it's really not costing a whole lot to have a full-time person around. And I don't think we're at the point of saying that there's a need for more than Melissa here. I think there's been a good balance between what she's offering and the state police that will do those emergency calls when she's not available. The other way to look at it is the amount of experience that Melissa now has, she becomes more and more efficient in what she does.
Yeah.
When she first started, she didn't have a lot of road experience. It didn't take long for that to change.
Yeah.
So you'd be losing a good person. So, but again, we've got a few months to really sit down and figure it out, and I can start putting some numbers together after, or as you start looking closer to your budget for 2014. Any other questions for me?
And I'm going to assume that there are grants out there, but that a lot of it you apply to the whole force.
We do,
and,
but what we do is we look.
Spread it out that way.
It's not when we get grants, we try to spread them out across the towns that support us contractually.
Or to get a specific tool or something to that makes your work easier. Right?
Yeah, but usually the grants that are done, like the Governor's Highway Safety grants, are directed towards the major roadways. Route 5, Route 30, Route 109, and the 91 corridor. So, I mean, that fits this area. There are some for, enforcement along secondary roads by schools.
There's nothing like animal control or, the stuff that, of course, right.
No. But we are continuing discussions with some organizations about animal control. I still think there's a need for it. We just got to find the right solution that's affordable, provides the service. But I'm not sure how yet. We are trying, this year we'll be trying something different in Westminster just to see if it'll work. But that's because Westminster's footing some of the upfront costs for equipment, but we'll see how that goes. If it works there, maybe we can try the same approach in some other towns. Now, I wish there was a lot of funding for animal control.
Yeah. We're working with our constable, who is quite interested in the work, and he's
Henry
Farnham.
Okay.
And he's doing some pamphlets and keeping really accurate records. And again, we don't really have he hasn't had the training to do a full animal control position with rabid animals and handling, all the tough cases when we have nowhere to transport. And so there's a lot of holes in it.
And that, in each town's a little different, but we're starting to see in many of the towns they have a constable animal control person that does a good job. But occasionally they just want that uniform presence to back them up, and we provide that under our contracts.
I mean, Melissa's been really good about, if we have an ordinance violation, she'll go out and speak to an owner and tell them, you can't let your dog run free, and issue a ticket if necessary, but we haven't asked for any transport or anything.
And when Melissa goes out on those calls, she somehow manages to turn it into a felony. We'd like to help. That's what her supervisors keep telling me at the office. Melissa's done it again. Which is good. I mean, she's paying attention to what's going on and asking all the right questions. But if you don't have any other questions for me, I will get out of your hair. And again, the new manager, and as you develop the budget for next year, we'll have to sit down and figure out what direction you want to go.
Do you know Cynthia? Do you know Cynthia Stoddard?
I believe I met her once.
Her husband's Nate Stoddard. He's now a select board member in Westminster.
Probably lives right next to me. I've been living in the same house for 11 years. I don't know my neighbors. So. They like it that way? No, that's not good.
Better for everybody.
They don't like it that way. They don't like it.
Next up.
Thanks, Keith. See ya.
Hello, gentlemen.
Daniel.
I have something for each of you. This is my recommendation of streetlight on lighting on poles to remove. It's fairly inclusive of all the lights that are on this map that aren't in the core of the village. And I don't know how detailed you want to get, or if you want to go over this now, or if you wanted to go over the policy, which I didn't bring.
Everyone has copies of the policy, so.
That may be where we want to start, because that sort of defines what the list looks like. My goal, this is a list of 27 lights, and my goal is to remove a significant number of lights to lower the town's electrical costs.
These are all ones that you would like to remove?
Well, these
ideally?
are all lights that, according to the policy that I created and submitted at your last meeting,
Yeah.
that, you know, if we go with that policy, most of these lights would come out. But there may be extenuating circumstances on a light-by-light or pole-by-pole basis where you want to leave them in.
Remind me what our total number of poles is?
We have
Total number of
43
lights?
lights,
43.
including the 2 at the Putney Pool.
Yeah.
The Putney Pool lights are actually a special case because those are not poles that are in the power line transmission network. So those poles, we could actually look at purchasing or renting.
Doing something
Yeah,
different.
because I've been waiting to hear back from Green Mountain Power about putting those lights on motion sensors. I've talked to a number of neighbors in the area there, and they would prefer not having the lights on all night. It would save a lot of electricity, and I think it would be more effective for security if the lights went on when there was some activity. So I haven't heard back, but if we don't hear back about that, then those 2 poles are on the property of the pool, which is town property. So theoretically, you already own the poles, and changing out the lights might just be a matter of having Green Mountain Power remove their lights and purchasing new lights with motion detectors, or some combination of scenarios. But there are 27 lights on this list. The first light is probably the most contentious, which is right across the street from Basketville Village. From the Basketville store. And really, it's on Main Street. It probably should stay, but I put it on the list only to sort of start the conversation, looking at the policy that we might want to create or ratify or whatever. Because this light really illuminates a store's parking area. And they have their own illumination on poles. So the question is, do we want to augment that? Do we want to have them pick up the cost? Do we want to play nice and just say, okay, well, you're a tax-paying entity?
I'm assuming at the western end of where that crosswalk
I believe that's.
is that right?
There's that pole right at the corner of the fence that's there.
Right. So it's where it used to be a crosswalk to go down into the manufacturing plant.
Probably, yes.
That'd be my guess.
It's either that or the next pole up.
Let me just bring up a brief point
Yeah.
that we're just starting the process of the engineering look at the extension of the sidewalk to the north end.
Right.
So a
leaving
lot
that
of
in
these,
place-
several of these lights are probably going,
No,
well,
there are
or,
two.
they're gonna be, probably moved, but there are other lighting,
Sure.
there's gonna be a
I
sort
think
of
this is
lighting
actually the only one
situation
in that route between
there and maybe that Sand Hill. Where on Sand Hill is it? Another,
it's Sand Hill right here. It's right after the corner where the restaurant and bar is. So it's just down Sand Hill a little ways. And you have to use your magnifying glass to see the numbers, but that's 17414, which is it's the only light on Sand Hill Road. And I talked to the neighbor there, and he actually minds the lights down here at Basketville more than he minds this one because he can see them. But according to the policy that I wrote, if we let that stand, then that light really is sort of irrelevant.
Who's it there to serve?
right,
Right.
what purpose is it?
Right. I mean, if we're trying to illuminate sidewalks and intersections to make sure that they're well illuminated and safer, then this light really does nothing. There's quite a number of lights on River Road that also are in the same situation. So that's why you'll see a number of them on River Road. There's a couple on Old Depot Road at the end of the road, where I am. There's one light on Old Route 5, 17844. I'm not sure what it does. It's near Johnson's Curve, I think, right here. So what I've done is I've circled in bright yellow, bright greenish yellow, the lights
The ones that maybe could go.
Yeah. And then after circling all these, talked to GMP and found that some of the ones I circled were actually private residences. So I was going back over them and making a note of that as well.
So you're saying that with this many lights, you'd reduce the town's light inventory by over half?
Yeah, I'm looking to do that. I'm looking to save the town money as well as save electricity. The other
What's
issue
the cost
here-
of our contract? I mean,
It's
I know-
between 450 and 525
Yeah.
each month, depending on how.
Right now, it's the year, I'm just looking for that.
And would it cut that in half if we did that? I mean, is it proportionate or?
Yeah, well, if we remove 20 to 25 lights, it would cut that
Cut
more
it
than half.
about, yeah.
But the other phase of this is that once the sidewalk is done on Main Street, we have lights on every other
Upgrade,
pole.
right,
In some places, and what I'd like to do is make sure there's lights on every pole.
Yeah.
These lights that we're going to be putting in are LED lights. They're
Right.
very
Very
efficient. They're
efficient,
20
right.
bulb lights. The cost per bulb is actually less than $1 less per month. So there'll be a slight decrease.
Yeah, but it's basically the same.
Basically the same cost. So the only way to save money is to remove.
Right now, we
streetlights.
we've spent $4,800 this year.
Change.
So the $5,500 budget, that's the normal budget for lights per year.
So in addition to these, then there's two on this building, which are a separate issue altogether, which I think I'd bring up. They're the old sodium vapor, they shoot up a lot of water.
Yeah.
It is on timer.
But they aren't part of the GMP
No.
thing.
We've talked about switching
Right,
out to
yeah.
it, but
Just an FYI.
just hasn't happened yet. We're waiting for Angie coordinator to get us a really good deal.
There you go.
on that.
Yeah, I mean, presumably
Right.
Efficiency Vermont or somebody would set us up with something
There are
reasonable on
rebates
that.
available for
Yeah.
LED lighting. Sure. Yeah.
Because the only thing I've heard so far is that, I mean, before you just, I understand you're going to entertain the whole idea, before we do a blanket turnout, we might want people like Tom or Melissa to go around and look at these sites
I was good.
for that reason,
I was wondering whether Robbie had any input on, I mean, do you feel like the rural lights are any value to you guys at all?
I have no idea.
That, which would indicate to me probably not.
Yeah, well, usually, if I can speak, I guess, about this, usually in the rural, on the deck, when we're out on the deck, we got our own lights, we don't need
Right.
street lights, as far as what we're doing. Spotlights, do whatever we need, flashlights for,
I think in front of a general store, it's helpful to have, I like the lighting there.
Yeah, file down here.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I'm not
Just-
suggesting we remove any lights near any downtown buildings except for the one up on Baskerville. And I'm not saying we should remove that. What I'm suggesting is
We
that
should look at
we
it.
create a protocol for what lights the town should be paying for and what lights businesses should be paying for. So if we're illuminating someone's property and they're benefiting and there's no sidewalk, is it really something we need? Now, that light in particular, I put it on there just to have this conversation, because I think at some point we will have a sidewalk going up there, and we will want lighting up there. Where those lights are on, where the poles
Probably
go.
not where that is, right?
Possibly. It's,
Yeah.
it's not in a bad place. It's just that there's no sidewalk.
There's no
no
logic to
intersection
it,
there, so
right.
it doesn't really.
It's just general lighting for
Right.
that part of town.
Which is, it's really drowned out by the existing Baskerville lighting.
Right.
There's another light at an intersection for Landmark, but it's not an intersection that they use a lot, it's their service entrance. And right up to their service entrance, they have their little street lights anyway. And so Landmark is another instance where, the town's providing a service of lighting, essentially. And I'm fine with that.
That's okay
We
if
want to do
if-
that,
right, yeah.
But it should be something that's clear in our policy so that we can look at lights that are way out in the middle of, like, here's one on Bear Hill, and it's like, well, what is on Bear Hill? It's basically all residents.
It's a subdivision that the town took over. I wonder if there's any requirement to light it.
That's what I wondered too, whether there are.
There's one on Parkman Wood Road
There's two on
we
Parkman
built
Wood
the
Road.
house
205.
30 years ago. I could see that light.
Do you like it?
And I can't see it anymore because, everything's
It's all
grown
grown
in.
up,
It's
yeah.
all grown up. In fact, I'm trying to think of exactly, but it's ringing a bell that there was a light down.
That is surprising though, that there's a light on Parkman.
You know what? I mean, you forget George Aiken lived right there.
Well,
on the corner, and Mac lived
Yeah,
next
a lot of
door.
these
So I
lights
think
have
a lot,
probably been there.
you know, I think it was like just a courtesy issue.
Yeah.
And when, you know, when development took place up there were really only 3 or 4 people
Right.
on that road.
right.
The Antoniwitzes.
And it may be, it may have been, because of sort of its novelty, it may have been more
Right.
desirable then
Well,
than it
you
is
know,
now. You
that
know.
was back in the era of, you know, electric
We
heat.
had it, why
Electric
not?
heat was cheap.
Yeah, exactly.
Do we have lights that say that the intersection like of.
But I can't see that light.
Mountain and West Hill, is there light there?
No.
So that-
No
that's like,
light
yeah,
at the
I think so.
intersection of Putney Mountain and West Hill.
Or Aiken Road and West Hill, or,
Hold on.
I'm just thinking of something,
Oh,
you know, we might want a light to
There's-
someone might shoot past.
No, there's no lighting off of, wait a minute, Tavern Hill, West Ridge. Wait a minute. These are like crazy maps. They're like, so Bigger Ridge, where is Putney School? West Hill, alright, got one.
Brook Road, right?
West Hill, Putney Mountain. No, there's no
No lighting.
nothing whatsoever. There's something way up here.
That's Parkman, that's the one on Parkman.
Yeah.
There's no. This is on Putney Mountain. It's on the corner of Music Lane and Putney Mountain. It is number
Yeah, that's about.
45150.
On the right, just below
44150.
where Gordy used to live.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
44150.
No kidding.
So it's an intersection, but it's out in the middle of nowhere. I don't really know what we're lighting. You know.
Yeah.
The
I just think
ways.
there's something, there's something,
Made
heavily
it.
trafficked intersections that's just nice sometimes to have.
Sure.
Light
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
I think of these lights in Putney, in Dummerston that have been out for like a year at the, where you get off and on southbound Route 91. I don't know if you've noticed that. Somebody hit a transformer,
Huh.
and that's where they're out, and they haven't no one's requested to have it repaired yet in Dummerston.
Uh-huh.
And there were 2 lights there which actually lit that exit and entrance ramp, and I find it's, you know, it's kind of,
That's not such a bad idea.
it's a good idea, I think, to
Yeah.
have
That's
that
not-
lit, because people come down there, you know, everyone's passing on the right. and
That's not on my map.
It isn't? No, it's not on light, I mean, it's just
No,
an
it's not
example
on light.
of.
Yeah. So I mean,
There are
ultimately,
spots where there's.
we're looking at actually keeping all of these, you know, except for a couple of the outlying ones, you know, and actually adding more right in the center of town. So,
How's that gonna go down? When you add more, then you have to.
well, there's every other pole that's got a light on it. And so once Main Street goes, once the sidewalk goes in, I'm figuring that
People want to.
the LED lights, once we, I mean, basically, the process of removing these and switching over to LED lights system-wide is gonna happen at the same time. We just need to tell Green Mountain Power which lights
Right.
we don't want. And
Right.
they'll come along and remove them, and then at the same time, while they're
They'll
in the
upgrade
area,
the other ones.
they'll upgrade the other
Yeah.
ones. And we're getting a rebate from Efficiency Vermont on all the light bulbs that we take out and or change. So if we request a light here to be removed, Green Mountain Power has this undepreciated costs depending on the age of the bulb, and they're going to charge the town. But Green Mountain and Efficiency Vermont is going to come in
Pay us back for that.
and basically refund.
$3,000 is what that first rebate that I signed was for, which is not quite as much as that email.
Right, so we need to double check the numbers. I don't know, you know, there's been several math discrepancies on Green Mountain Power's end, so it's entirely possible that there is a discrepancy, but I was under the impression they were going to cover 100% of the cost, so.
Efficiency Vermont.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, I thought.
There's also some question, I did a little bit of research on whether utilities have a 7-year or a 20-year depreciation schedule. And from what I can find out, it's a 7-year, but they are charging us for a 20-year depreciation schedule. So anything from 1983 and before, they'll replace for free. Anything that's newer than 1983, they want to charge us money for. And it's been a sticking point for me for over a year.
20 year? 90, so 1993.
93.
Yeah.
That's 83.
Yeah.
93. Right.
Um,
So either way, Efficiency Vermont's going to reimburse us. I'm just really looking to make sure that
You get what's
T's
due.
crossed and the
Right.
I's
Yeah,
are dotted,
absolutely.
and Efficiency Vermont's not paying Green Mountain Power too much money.
Right.
But other than that, it shouldn't affect the town.
So, What's the legal process? I mean, do we have to, is this just a decision we make, or do we have to,
Well, I think it's,
you know, is there anything
does it
public
have to be
hearing
like
oriented?
an
Or
ordinance,
that's,
a
I
town
don't
ordinance? I
know.
would say a policy like this, just, I think mostly needs feedback. I don't think it rises to the
Right.
level of a public policy. I mean, I think this is something the selectmen can adopt. I mean, I can double check that with the town council to make sure.
We probably should.
But I would
yeah.
say that
I mean-
probably you can just adopt it and
Calling in the people who are or directly affected by it. You know,
kind of tricky.
Yeah,
Because as
I know.
Daniel said in his report, I mean, you might get one
I
person
know,
who wants
I
it
think
shot
you
out
gotta
right
keep
away,
looking.
and other
Perhaps,
people-
you know, with a real focus, like, we are taking action on this within 90 days, and now is your chance to wind up on it, and, you know, we want to hear your input, but we still are essentially going to decide, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
And
it's up
that
to you.
might also help people focus a little bit on, you know, it sounds like, you know, I know how, you know, like surveys can go, somebody says, oh, well, yeah, I like the idea of lights,
Yeah, that's
but they're
great.
not, right, exactly, but they're not really thinking about it, whereas you give somebody a time frame and
A little history here, the
backup.
Putney Energy Committee did a
Yep.
survey,
Yeah, I remember
and it
that.
was really inconclusive. I mean, we walked
Right.
around, we talked to everyone, like, basically in this loop here, you know.
But that was all,
Right,
that
but
was
you
just
know.
in village,
Yeah,
right?
in the village,
Right.
right.
But doing this by fiat isn't gonna fly.
Right,
You know,
so
we gotta pull, you know, some kind of public hearing on it of, you know, saying this is
Right,
what's
so
going,
we have-
this action's going to take place.
Right.
Therefore, you have this time frame to, you know.
Do we, I mean, I guess my question, I mean, legally, I'm not sure we have to. I guess the other question is, you know, are there a dozen of these that 99% of people aren't even gonna notice that they went out?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
most of
If
these.
it were up to me, I would go through this list carefully, cross off a few that you know you want to keep, and then submit the rest. And Green Mountain Power will just take them out, and then if people really want them, they'll notice they're gone. There won't be any lights, so Green Mountain Power won't be getting a call saying the light's out. The light will be gone. So, and then you put out a word, you know, you'll put out a notice or something in the paper or however you do it, saying lights have been removed. We have a policy. If you have a grievance, you know, we can put the light back, or we can look at how it might be a light you want to pay for yourself.
See the headlines now, the darkness descends on Putney.
Well, that's actually a good thing, because the other point of doing all this is there's something called the Dark Skies Initiative, where the current state of the art of lighting keeps light from going
Low,
above the
right.
center line of the light. And most of the lights that we have, especially residential lights, just broadcast light
Right.
everywhere, and it makes it difficult to see
See
stars.
stars
at night.
and- yeah.
You know, you have this glow from towns and villages like Keene, Brattleboro.
Yeah.
So that's the other reason for doing this. You know.
Well, to give you an idea, if it actually rises to the level of something that needs an ordinance, then it actually needs to be announced in the paper. There's a 60-day period before it takes effect, at which point anybody can come back to the board and demand a public hearing on it. If it doesn't, then you could probably shorten the time frame up, and you could do it a 30-day, we could still put something in the paper, and we could give this out to the public safety people, and the board.
and or list
and
this
everyone-
in,
this
list
and
this
just
in
go
the
down.
paper.
List this, yeah, list this in the paper, just say
exactly.
these lights are likely to be
Yeah.
discontinued,
If you have an opinion,
let us know.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I just think that it's.
Yeah, well, that's
That
reasonable.
that wouldn't be too expensive, I don't think.
That is nice.
Well, I don't know, what's the record been of, I mean, a lot of towns are doing this.
A lot of towns,
And
yes.
has anybody had huge outcry from,
No, I think when you combine this with switching over to LED lighting, which will save you 60 to 80% of the energy used for every light bulb, you'll be happy with it.
All of a
It's
sudden,
win-win.
yeah, I mean, the combination of getting rid of half and switching,
Yeah.
you know, all of a sudden our bill's gonna be a quarter of what it
well,
was.
which the bill,
No,
the
the
bill
bill
doesn't
Oh,
go
because the
down
rent, the
for
rental,
the unit.
the new LED bulbs are barely less money.
because
than
we're
tariff,
paying more in rental.
Because they cost the company more to buy.
Right.
They,
Right.
however, will save the company a lot in terms of maintenance because they will last 20 years.
And I feel
Right,
so
the
much
first ones are
better
going to be
knowing that
expensive,
GMP's
but
gonna
in
save
20
money.
years, they're going to be
That's
cheap.
true, yeah. Well, we actually saved, what,
But I'm-
$1,200 just waiting a year because all these depreciations just expired.
Another year.
I'm a believer in LED lights.
So,
I like the
It was
light.
more that I was trying to
Figure out
ascertain
exactly.
the options that
Right,
the
right,
lighting.
Daniel has lived and really worked
We
hard.
do this in 20, if we do this in 2015, then.
Right, well, the thing is, you're using electricity all the while.
Right, of
So
course,
it's
yeah.
better to do it as soon as possible. The reason-
And getting rid of as many as possible. I mean,
If they're not really
Yeah,
vertical.
I would say that you want to keep
Safety.
the one on the top of the list, and you probably want to keep the one in front of Landmark, just to be. a
or
good
talk to
neighbor.
them, I mean,
Yeah,
talk to them about
Right,
it.
or
And-
talk to them and say,
Right.
sure, yeah, if they want to pick it up, that's
No,
great.
there's a finite
Well,
date
if they
that
want to
we
pick it
lose
up and/or if they say, you know, we really
Don't care.
Or if
need
when
that
we
light,
convert
and/or they say, we really don't care.
two LEDs, you know,
That's
hook
what I
them into the deal, so, you know, they can, and then they would take over, you know, or something like that, you know.
I'm sorry.
I will kind of hook them into our deal to change over the existing poles we're keeping with LEDs.
Sure.
Right, hook them into that as well, so that if they wanted to keep these poles,
All
But
of the
then
lights
they
are
would
going to
take
get
it over.
changed over.
right, yeah.
And
But then
if they
would
want to
take
keep
it
them,
over.
they would get changed over as well. That makes, I'm sorry, I'm not.
No, no, I'm just, you know.
If you want everyone on board, yes, but
But
it's
they
really
have
a town
LED
decision.
Do they have LED lighting within the campus?
No, I don't think their street lighting is LED lighting at this point. They recently redid their lighting a few years ago, and that was before LED lighting really started getting good.
Yeah.
In fact, in the last 6 months, GMP went from a 30 LED unit to a 20 LED unit. The 20 is brighter and it's got a cleaner white light than the bluish one. It's got 4 blue ones around, scattered around town, and 1 white one on the end of near the end of Old Depot Road behind the People's Bank. So you can see the difference in the lighting. They'll all be white ones eventually because they're just a more efficient light. So the technology marches forward pretty quickly. You know. And last week, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, you got my policy
Yes.
Yes, the
suggestions,
policy.
and so that can be easily amended if you want to add a section on the grievance process or how a customer would take over payments on a given lighting pole. That probably should be in there. I'm willing to.
Okay.
Just think ideally, we would work proactively as opposed to
Well,
retroactively.
so then I'm
yes.
getting the sense that you'd like to pursue this and maybe get it moving.
I would say so.
I'm not quite ready to adopt it, Paul's, because we don't know if it's ready to be adopted.
Right, sure.
But
Yeah, no, I think, talk to Richard. Make sure we're not doing anything.
Okay.
Make sure Daniel isn't leading us
Thank
down
you
some
for,
garden pathway. you know?
I took the policies from other towns that have adopted lighting policies. So most of
Right, no, the policy I wouldn't think, it's just the question of whether we're asking for any sort of trouble by sort of blanket eliminating a bunch
Yeah,
of
well,
stuff.
it's not a blanket. There's a very
Targeted.
It's targeted.
Right,
It's not-
but it
everything
still
else
has
that's in our
to
town
lighting,
that's
so.
in the middle of some road without an intersection. you know,
Right,
or
yeah,
whatever.
no,
I
that
left
seems
all
pretty
the
random.
ones around the central school just because it's the central school.
Right.
And really, I'd like to address the pool, but that's a separate issue, and I'll follow up with that. Do you want copies of these maps so you can review them, or because this is the only copy I have right now? And quite frankly, I'd actually blow it up for you so you don't have to do this if you are
I think
interested.
we can probably just live with a list for the time being.
Okay, yeah, I've tried to put locations on each
Yeah,
one.
the other thing
I'll send this to you electronically.
And then at some point, you probably want to make it clear, if you're planning to do it, that you're going to add lighting to the downtown area, if in fact people
Right.
say, yeah, let's work, you know, because that might, some people might say,
I'll get
oh,
on board with that.
or not,
Oh, right.
you know?
Yeah, I tried really hard to get lights with back shields, but that's just not an option unless we buy the lights ourselves. Or some evening go up there with a bucket loader and screw on a little shield. It's not an option from Green Mountain Power.
So
What that
that's
would do
not
is it would-
shining
it would
into
keep light out
somebody's
of
yard.
people's.
Yeah, they used to, the older lights had very targeted.
Oh, these are very
Those are
targeted.
light. Oh, they- so they're
But
not-
but their target is long and wide.
Right.
I can
down
get you
the
the.
sidewalk, but not into people's yards, right? Was
They
that-
make a couple of different styles.
They
But
don't-
Green Mountain Power
like a
bulk
rectangle.
buys these, so they only have one style for us.
Yeah.
It really, statewide. But they are, the illumination pattern is fairly long, and it will do a nice job, but not nice enough on every other pole for our new sidewalk. But there may be some poles where people really don't want it, and we'll just have to live with that.
Yeah.
That's that's a good point.
I'm just wondering, is this the opposite of opt? Opt and de-opt?
Oh, good catch.
As long as Daniel's here, I can tell you that we are within the hours of finishing that
Finishing,
case.
Oh, that's great. Congratulations.
Right? Every time we got back and forth with our project, this, man, Ed Deligan. And I think we're getting to the point where we're gonna get some money back.
Good. And what's the name came by with a check for you?
Yes,
Good.
yes,
So you're all
that little,
squared away.
that little glitch got cleared up.
Oh,
yes.
the overpayment, yeah, that's good.
Okay, great, congratulations.
Thank you, Daniel.
I will submit this in electronic format for you guys. And correct spelling.
The other light that I've heard complaints about that is probably out of our purview, but you might be able to drop it in, is the one in the front hallway of the new glass hallway in the front of Putney Central School, in the turnaround area. I guess it's on 24 hours a day.
Oh,
And
I'll
so,
talk to them.
yeah, motion sensor might make
Yeah, in
sense.
fact, the architects or Greenberg
Right.
wanted me to come and sort of liaison with Efficiency Vermont and them on the new project, so I can certainly
A couple people have
have them
mentioned
look
that
at
too.
that light bulb.
Why's that light on 24 hours a
Put
day?
it on its timer or motion sensor. Timers are great.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the new electronic timers fit right into basically right into an outlet area, a recessed outlet, and they're programmable, and they take they have an atomic clock basically built in and a little battery.
Reset
So,
themselves. Yeah.
yes, we've never reset our timer for the lights out there.
No, I mean, a couple times we got out of sync somehow, we had to go down
Right.
and recalibrate it, but I think right now it comes on, I don't know what time it comes on.
Evening.
Yeah, evening, sometime in the evening, I don't know if it comes on.
probably on now.
It might be on now, I don't know.
No, I actually wanted to put the outdoor light over the door on a timer too, because I often see that one just left on by accident.
Right.
And,
Tonight's the night.
tonight's the night, I realized that.
We'll be left on.
Well, thank you again.
Thanks, Daniel.
Okay, thanks.
For you, if you like, spelling errors and all.
All right, so we'll do a little more research and see if we can move it forward. One way or the other to get those LED lights, I think would be great.
Absolutely. No, and I'm guessing that at least 60 to 75% of these could go away
And
pretty
not cause
comfortably.
any issues.
Yeah.
It's just- What's next?
And that's sort of my laundry list of stuff. You guys want to go?
Well, do we want to?
Well, it's probably an executive session.
That's where I was. Do we want to break for an executive
Well,
session?
we have one at the end of the meeting to discuss some contract business, a couple of contracts to go over. You could certainly go into executive session now.
Come out
and come
and then
back
go.
out.
I just hate to make Robbie sit here through. I mean,
Go for it.
so this is pretty exciting stuff. But
Most of it isn't going to take too long in this, while it's,
what do you think? Your call.
It doesn't look like it's gonna take too long.
yeah, if it gets the first
You
stuff
can
going
wait for a
on,
little
it's
while.
fine. Okay, so the Putney Water System, well, that's just,
Yeah.
so I've been asked to go up and, by Mark,
Accept
to
it.
accept this tomorrow. So,
Which is where? Montpelier?
the
No.
Killington, same place we have the town fair,
Oh,
Road trip, free lunch?
lunch and free lunch.
there you go.
But it seems nice. Joe will be up there earlier for trainings, but it'll be nice to show that we're happy we got it. It's for the facility as a whole. I don't think it's a water test. The taste thing, I think it's a quality and
It's just
Quality of operation.
operation.
Yes.
Yeah,
the
good.
people have been appreciative, so good. So there's that. Putney Pool painting, just to let you know, we picked a color, the lightest color, the blue, which will be painted on the
Blue?
ramp. Ice, what is it called, blue mist? They're all blue. They're all,
That's right.
I don't recall
I'm
seeing,
being
I don't
facetious.
see, I recall seeing a color chart presented.
well, I'm sorry, we talked about that. We actually just looked at it online, but they only have 3 colors that you can pick from.
So blue, blue, or blue.
Blue and blue. Anywhere from like Caribbean blue to this lighter blue. So it seems like the lighter one was probably good. You want to shock people.
Sure, you made a great choice.
And that will be done next week. They're going to be doing that. And we made an arrangement with Tom to refill the pool using
Oh, good.
the trucks and his, he'll get some guys to, step
Yeah.
up and
Sure.
do it.
Yeah.
And save us a lot of money. Because actually, it was turning out the most expensive thing was refilling the pool. Because to get a tanker, a big enough tanker to like go and get loads at like 6,000 gallons a piece was gonna cost us like $1,600 just to refill it. So this is better.
Good.
So everything should
There-
fall together. Yeah. And let's open it. We're hoping to open on,
June 16th.
thank you. We've had a
Which is
request
the
for
first
earlier.
Saturday after
Yeah.
school's done on the
Maybe it might be
13th.
ready for a
Yeah.
party the 15th. There's somebody wanted to have it open for the 11th. I don't think we could possibly get that ready this year for that. We'll see where it ends up, but it sounds like, because epoxy has to cure for a week, then it has to be refilled, and because it's water that's coming out of the brook, it's
Right.
gonna have to be treated for a couple of days, and so. But otherwise, everything's okay down there. No damage this winter.
Good.
Delinquent collections, Cynthia and I sat down with Richard Patant and Larry Slazen and had a good discussion about this whole process, and what's come out is
Larry Slazen is who?
one of the partners at San Nostrum,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and because he knows Cynthia, there's a lot of work in Westminster.
Yeah.
He thought he'd come down, and they're doing a lot of towns, and one thing that did come out of it is that they immediately looked at our policy, and really there's some stuff in there that is actually not actually by the book. So we've sent them that for
Our policy
on
for
delinquent
sales
collections,
of delinquent collections.
in general. Yeah, so they're going to rewrite that for us. Tax sales are going to take place in early August. We sent out notices yesterday to the approximately 17 people that have a
Possible.
2-year backlog.
Yeah.
So people are starting to call to either make an arrangement to, basically take themselves off that list. They have until June 6th to get in touch. Then the process starts, the title searches and all that. People have been good about, most people have been good coming in, clearing up their accounts. We're deciding it's probably just monthly billing, month after month, is probably going to do more than anything else.
Yeah.
To just clean up
Yeah.
accounts.
Persistence.
Yeah, so it's going well.
Good.
Health insurance reimbursement policy, I brought it up to you guys, explain how that works. And Cynthia would be glad to take that and take
Interested.
her husband's insurance. Yes, so I would definitely say we want to adopt
A
the
policy.
Policy
Yeah.
for buyout
policy
of
for,
spouses.
yes, we have some language here from VLCT. So the buyout option is for employees who opt not to take, which in this case we consider, if we use that language and create a policy, then everyone who's under our insurance would be free to do this if they had that option. We assume it would only, it would most likely be someone with a double or a family plan that would take it, but they all need to be the same.
Right, of course. Do we have anybody who's likely to do that?
I don't think so at the moment. Someone whose spouse has a better plan or a plan that would make sense, I don't think so.
Hi. I completely forgot my other agenda item. I don't know if you have any more time. It should only take 2 minutes or so.
Yes, well,
Sorry to interrupt. Let's see, I was building the bike shed behind the little barn here, and I should be done this weekend. And we'll order a bike rack, which should hold 15 to 18 bikes. But as I was fixing the building, I went inside, and it's just a lovely space. And I was thinking, gee, wouldn't it be nice to get all the bikes out of the basement and have a more permanent location for bikes and maybe a small bike workshop, so I don't have to go down to the West Hill shop, which is rather far away from the central location. So I thought I would ask sort of see how you feel about possibly sharing the space with the gentleman who's doing the can recycling and whatnot. And of course, we'd ask him as well, and if I could use the south half of the building, or maybe the upstairs area, which is not being used, I would gladly improve the structure, clean the windows, help with moving the signboard that's on the outside of the wall over to the general store, and continue to repair the foundation, which we did some work on because the building had bowed out at the bottom. So we actually lifted up the main beam and kicked it over and lined up what we could of the cinder block. So go take a look at it because it's a lot straighter than it was. And I also bought clapboard siding for it. So once it's all put back together, we'll re-side it and it should look as good as new. So you don't need to.
It looks like there's plenty, I mean,
Does he ever use?
He does, but he's got a collection of the, these banana fruit crates, which he uses to ship bottles off when he sorts them, but I think he's got way more probably than really need to
They could also
the
be
operation.
stored in shelves.
Right, they could certainly
I would even
organize.
donate some shelves
Yeah.
just to get those
I
things
gotta,
in there.
I gotta think that would actually, might be a great
Is
combination.
it possible that long-term that operation could get moved down to the rest of the recycling
Well, we
business?
tried, and I talked to
Food for
Jerry about
thought,
it,
yeah.
and it just, unless we make more room, then.
Right,
Make
maybe
a
not
shelf or
right, make some kind of,
Yeah.
I mean, he does need storage, and he does get a lot of bottles that he has to
Right.
accumulate
Unless,
before he ships them
you know,
off.
this building, does lend itself to,
Yeah.
all
Yeah, I
kinds
don't
of
think
discussions.
If,
on it over
if
the-
nothing else, we probably ought to have a collection site down there, a collection barrel down there that he grabs.
That's a good idea.
Because
Well, I don't want to encourage people to do it, because, you don't want to have to have him hauling it back up here to any great extent. That was something we talked about.
well, I just think, myself included, if I'm there and I'm
No,
going through
yeah.
my bottles and there's a 6-pack of returnables,
You don't bring them up here? Well, apparently most people still do.
No, if I had a whole collection, I would, but if it's just a few here and there where I used to,
Yeah.
sort of set those aside as I went through it.
At any rate, since the main bike shed for the green bike project is right here on the outside, it makes sense to have, if there's a broken bike, to just wheel it back in and have instructions to say, and that way I don't have to truck them down to the West Hill shop for repair, which I only have the West Hill shop space between like now and early fall. So it's really like a 4-month window where I can actually repair bikes down there, and then they take it back for their ski season. So if I had a more permanent location, I would sort of be able to do the bikes a little more regularly. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say, and please let me know.
Sure.
Check with Jerry and talk about how we could, if you guys are good with that, then I'll just talk about how we'll organize it, because I'm sure there's enough room in there. It's way bigger.
It is, it's a nice space. Thanks for your time.
Couple windows in that south side would go a long way.
That's true. I don't want to suggest anything structurally, altering, but yes, I agree.
I'll fix that thing up. I can have it for a shop space.
Yeah, really, wait a minute. That's all it takes. Coming at
Make
us.
that place look like I'm in back there.
You want to rent it?
I'm gonna lease some space to them, all right? No, it's,
I think getting him out of the basement here would be great.
Yeah,
And,
that would
Yeah.
make sense.
Well, no,
That's gotta be a real pain in the neck for him.
oh, just, trip down those
Up and
stairs.
down, yeah, no, that's not.
So back to the health insurance reimbursement policy. So are we okay if we adopt that as I think this is the way to go, the buyout option,
Yeah.
providing.
So do we want to adopt this or the one that,
Well, that language,
as our,
but I think that's the second
here.
one, that the what do we call it?
PR.
Premium reimbursement account?
PRA? yeah.
PRA.
Because that is pre-tax. So that's just going to be processed as health insurance. It means that it will be a legitimate health insurance
Expense for us, yeah.
for us, so there'll be no FICA on it.
Yeah.
And there will be no tax on it for the recipient.
So we would,
It's just it's a lot cleaner. And it automatically requires that you prove that you have insurance to get it somewhere else. You don't have to deal with monitoring, so.
Okay.
And we think it will be administered through choice care. So that basically the check would probably come directly
Through
Choice
through
Group.
that.
You know,
Very similar to what the schools do.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we
adopt.
adopt the buyout option as presented by the VLCT, moving towards the premium reimbursement account.
Yeah, we can
Tweak the language a little bit.
tweak the language to make it reflect that we're modeling it on the VLCT policy, and it's going to be for the premium reimbursement option. And, yeah, it's great. I mean, that's going to save the town a good
Yeah,
chunk of change
this
this
is
year.
definitely a win-win for everybody.
Because we don't know how long it will last, but
Even, you know, every year it adds up. I mean, you look at a family policy, it's what, about 12 grand a year, 10 to 12.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
Second?
second, it was,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve adopt the VLCT's buyout option for the health insurance policy and lean towards the premium reimbursement account for all employees, given the option for buyout. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor?
aye.
Is that clear enough for the folks at home, do you think, Rich? We actually mentioned that this is an option to allow someone to use their spouse's insurance instead of the town's insurance.
It's the discussion we had in the last
We
meeting
have it.
too, so for those
Okay.
people who
Yeah.
watch regularly,
So that's a growing number, right?
yes. Did you see that one, Robbie?
I can get that, I get a little too deep in the woods to get that, Jim.
Okay, great. Phase 2 sidewalk update, Brad and Josh were both here, and we talked with the engineer. It was a good discussion, I thought, about the options and the landmarks involved. And David said, went away with all of your thoughts, and he's going to really start to try to do two realistic alternatives if he can convince himself that there are two alternatives. We'll see, but certainly trying to work out the one on Route 5 would be one, and the other one, is there some other way that's still direct enough and cost effective enough to consider? So I guess you'll be hearing from him in June. So maybe some kind of public, hope was like, right, that's where we left it, there would be maybe a public input meeting sometime in June if they could get it
To make that happen.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Bus shelters, not too much to add to that. I mean, we're waiting to hear about this bike rack that would attach to that, which would be,
Makes sense.
and I've had Phil Bannister's looked at it, and Dennis, about the positioning of it so that it works for plowing, and Brad too had input about, how to put it so that we could
You're not gonna
take advantage of the handicap thing. Number one, it's got a handicap stall, and it should be, probably have a path to the road if it gets put in a little apron or something. But there's a really nice spot to put it there. It's almost really level with the road. Just maybe put in a little asphalt.
Do we have to put a culvert?
I don't think so. Dennis is going to get back to me whether we needed, because it almost is like it drains it either way from that spot. Some of it goes up, toward Old Route 5, and then some of it goes down Alice Holloway. We're kind of looking at a spot that's right there.
And there was some question
Between
about
the two.
permitting process or anything,
Oh, I mean, I think Tom feels like, it's a public structure, probably he should at least sign off on it, but there's no fees or anything or inspection. It's just making sure that everyone's happy with the, I'm not sure it's engineered to the nth degree.
Do what it's supposed to do.
So, we'll see, it is 850 pounds of parts, so it does mean
some assembly required.
some assembly required.
Right.
I have a feeling gonna be a little bigger project than, you know, just some, I don't know, maybe not, maybe it'll go up in the morning sometime, but I think it has to be probably trucked down here from Rockingham, and then the footings and pad have to be poured, and they said usually there's a foot larger than the structure, is what they like. So it'll be a little different than the original. Plus whatever.
Charge a serious markup on that, eh?
Open up the
Whatever we
pad,
do
your bag
with,
of parts,
for
dump it
that
out.
other-
Yeah, exactly. Start scratching that.
As the wind blows away the instructions.
Good. All right, so we'll keep moving on that. Daniel's been talking, if we want to get that bike thing, you know, get some idea what that looks like. River Road Arch Bridge is about half done. We're making the second payment on this warrant. Doing a good, impressive
nice.
job. Yeah, it's great. But
I have not. I was-
check it out. They put in the huge granite like bunks, you know, down at the base. They took all the stuff right down to the bottom of the arch and put in these big wing wall structures, which I think will, you know, before it was sort of rubble, and you know, this will, and then when they get up a certain height, they're going to lay in more granite stone.
Good.
But they're having a ball. Frankly, they're loving the job, so
Yeah.
tell them to do a good job.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Hidden Acres Gravel, not too much. Let me see. The last meeting, the same night, they had a neighbors meeting, and it went well. I mean, there's still, you know, some trepidation by at least one
Not surprising.
or two, but most of them, now that they realize it's really far back, and that in fact, especially if we go in through the SB lands for 5 years, no one's going to know it's
Very
there at
little,
all.
yeah.
And so but there's still, of course, they're going to hope that
Blasting issue still.
the blasting would be always an issue, and there's. Yeah. But there's hope that they will get the homeowners association to at least take a position that they won't fight it before the Act 250, because the next thing that's going to happen is the Act 250 permit is going to get filled out and filed. So we'll all get more involved as that happens.
Right.
Both highway departments will have to, you know, have some input on operation hours and times. Okay. Sidewalk project change order. Really nothing more to tell you because we still have a couple things that need to get addressed, but because the project manager supervisor was on a short vacation, he just got back to work today. He's the one who's going to do up the costs. So we will find out this week what, there are two structures that still have to be resolved. The big one you see sitting down there. And it looks like that fix is just going to move that one back and drop it in about, I don't know, 20 feet north. And then go down with a new pipe. And so there'll be some, you know, that won't be a big cost. The one further, the one by Lowell Ellis's is a little different because the one that we bought for can't possibly fit in there, was the opinion of our engineer and the builders. But they do have a good solution, which is basically a smaller one that would drop right in next to the existing one and straddle the pipe. So I don't think that really won't be that big a deal.
When are they gonna start actually pouring down there?
Right now, the 29th is the stop, next Tuesday. They're laying in the asphalt.
I saw that, yeah, it looks good.
For the rest of the week, and yeah, and then I hope to start pouring on the
Great.
29th. So next week sometime you'll start seeing sections poured, you know, I don't know how long it would take, really, we thought probably a week to do that section, roughly 200 feet a day, I think they're hoping. Yeah, it looks good, no, it seems, our engineer is good, he said they're meticulous, so far they've shown, you know, don't seem to cut corners, they really do a good job.
And do you know, what do they do to prevent a bunch of initials in it? I mean, do they pour it early enough in the day that it's,
You know, that is.
and put accelerant in it? I wonder.
No, I think they try to let it cure slowly, and so I
Yeah,
guess it's sort of like
perfect,
you gotta try to keep your eye on it,
Yeah,
and hopefully it's set up by the time they go home.
Just from experience, just do it while kids are in school.
yeah.
Is the best.
It should be relatively hard in 5 hours.
But, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
or early,
it's
yeah.
down by the library that will be the biggest challenge, you know. If they-
Right, because that's where they're gonna be anyway,
A lot of
yeah.
kids hanging out and probably watching and.
Maybe we should, might be worth mentioning that to Melissa, that,
Yeah,
because that would be too bad
yeah,
to,
if you get some real messed up
yeah.
animals, yeah, that would be good. Yeah, budgets, I threw a budget in here, I mean, you guys can take a look at it at your leisure, I mean, we're doing fine, I mean, Cynthia and I went through, you know, we'll do a little more thorough fine tuning next couple of weeks. I think we'll definitely be adding to the surplus this year, some amount, maybe not a huge amount, but something. There'll be a couple questions I'll probably, you know, there'll probably be a few expenses that maybe we would want to eliminate before they hit it. There's a deficit, I think specifically a couple of fire department expenses that we authorized during the year, the extra turnout gear and some other stuff that added some money, so you've got to be a decision to make later on. We did find something interesting today. We had in the course of a little follow-up where the first payment to the bank, the bond bank, was sent to the wrong address. So we didn't know that we were supposed to make a payment.
We
on
were
May
already in
15th.
default, so
So we were
Default
told-
or delinquency or something?
we had to wire the money today. But
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. But it does appear, from what we can tell, that actually the way this works out, that the fire department reimbursement fund, now the public safety reimbursement fund, because of the way the fire station debt fell, the money that we appropriated, most of it is not going to get used this year in that fund. Which, you know, I say most of it, probably 2/3 of it, evidently. So we'll have to make a decision as to, you know, how does it just get returned to that fund.
Roll it
But
in.
one way or the other, you're going to be ahead of the game now on that fund. You're going to sort of have
cushion.
a cushion right up front of about $40,000, it appears.
Let's keep it right there.
So you
Keep it as a cushion.
So it's all kinds of, I mean, that might be your public safety thing.
Starter,
As you
yeah.
think about your other positions. and
Yeah.
So who knows? That's unanticipated. But
What's it been, 2 years, 3 years since we negotiated with the schools? Was that 2 years ago?
yeah, this is the second payments that are being made. So another 3 years on the agreement.
It was a 5-year agreement.
5-year.
Because that would certainly be, I think, in the next round of negotiations.
Right.
Oh,
That would be a very reasonable thing to be approaching. I mean, I don't know how often Melissa goes to either or, but I would certainly think that it would be of
EMT
value to them.
certification.
Well, she'll be up with them, or, yeah. But just to have a known entity coming in from the sheriff's department would be a big value for all the schools, I would think.
But that fund continues, you know, to be serviced by school gifts and other, you know, the ordinance.
Right.
You're gonna get ahead of the game because the fire.
It starts to retire,
Starts
yeah.
to retire.
Yeah.
It's going down 4,000 or 5,000 a year.
Which that puts us ahead.
So we'll give you,
Well, we're gonna need that new police station though.
well,
Right next to the parking ride.
that's it.
So the
that's
recycling center.
This program closed, and I gave it to you. We were just trying to finish up, getting our money back in.
Good.
Okay, so, anything else, Laura, that I overlooked?
There was one issue that I just hadn't mentioned to you that has come up at the school. I guess there's been some resistance seeming at the last school board meeting. There was discussion about public safety up there. I don't know whether you've heard anything about this, but just a little bit of, there's apparently it's highly recommended by the state that there's at least one and I guess two safety committees that are formed for different aspects of maintaining safe environments within the school, and I guess Tom has been trying to encourage that for quite some time up there, as well as Tony, and it appears that there's been some resistance to that. So it came up at the last school board meeting that that's something that the PTO would like to see happen, is to form those committees. So there's going to be a forum next Thursday night, I believe it is, to basically hear people's opinions about school safety options. I mean, for example, the doors in the classrooms are only lockable from the exterior. So if there was, an intruder, can't lock them out. And that's something that I guess has been on the radar for a while that hasn't been taken care of. And then, so it's just something that came up at the school board meeting that, I don't know whether Tom and I have talked back and forth a little bit about it, and I don't know whether we have a role, should have a role, shouldn't have a role, but it sounds like it may be getting addressed now that it's becoming a little bit more
Interesting.
on the table, but it seems like something that was preferably just backburnered, so I think it will be coming
I'm
to
not
the
familiar
front
with those
burner.
committees. I mean, public safety committees are pretty common. Often some towns will have a public safety committee that addresses almost any issue that someone brings up, whether it's streetlights or stop signs or whatever, they would have input. But a specific school-related committee that would be...
That's my understanding. I haven't...
They tend to be, rather, jealous of that authority.
Exactly. That seems to be the issue, is that
they don't want
it...
Push it, they want to...
Exactly.
The ideas that come out of it, they want to come from out of in-house.
In-house, right. But,
Or within the district, what kind of
well, I
issues
mean,
that raises within.
it sounds like, I don't know, it sounds like the district has not...
Sounds like you got between two.
Yeah, exactly. And it sounds like the district isn't all that interested in it either, but particularly if it's going to be costing money. But, like the fact that you can't lock an intruder out of a classroom, to me, that seems like a basic safety issue that we should...
And I don't see why that they would not be able to accommodate.
The only thing I could...
Be a budgeting issue.
The only thing right, exactly. Now it's a budget issue, but I guess that has been at least discussed, that locks should be priced.
Falls into local control.
One would think. The only logic I could see for the other way around was that, you wouldn't want a kid to be able to lock people out, but of course you'd have the key anyway, so I don't know. But just so people are aware, there will be a public forum next Thursday to discuss that.
Before we can do second one question, did anyone here go to that?
I didn't. Did you make it?
I went back myself.
Oh, I understood about it today. It was
Unfortunately.
I was interested, but I had something else. But Daniel went, and he was not terribly impressed, but just
How many people showed?
about 30. There was an article in the paper. I mean,
Was there?
it's
I
still
haven't
there's,
seen it.
I don't know much other.
So what was he not impressed by?
Oh, just the solutions, or or the sort of the tentative solutions. I mean, I think it's because it's still kind of up in the air as to how, how wireless. I mean, the wireless solution as opposed to the wired solution.
Right.
But that's their.
It's all coming down to money,
That's what they want to do, is the
I
wireless
think that's
solution.
Retail's.
A blanket. Yeah.
That's their mission or brief or whatever you're going to call it. I mean, Sovereignet is the one that's running
The lines, right.
but then there's all been this discussion about how do you propagate signals
From
from the
there.
cable up
Right.
to everybody's house, and I think Daniel was feeling that basically if it's a cellular solution, cellular companies really aren't regulated by the state, and it requires more towers, and how's that ever going to work? So I don't know. I don't. It would be
Well,
interesting to hear some more of it.
yeah. No, not gonna do it, so. But, no, still down there, parked in front of the library.
We're good. Like you guys said, look at the, I mean, if you have any issues, bring them back next time, but we'll try to come up with a harder number as to where we think we'll be at the end of the fiscal year. But let's, fine, we have no
Things are
major,
in line.
yeah, no major issues.
Okay. Go executive session. Motion, I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Not coming back out to take any action tonight, probably.
Well,
I don't have anything that's
Actionable.
probably going to require any
okay.
voting.
All right.
Moved and seconded that we
Do we need,
proceed into executive session.
are there any warrants that we need to sign?
Oh, yeah, we can come back out. and
Oh, we can do
that.
that. All right, so we'll be coming back
I
on to
guess
the
you'll be
warrants.
coming back up to sign the warrants.
Okay. All those in favor of proceeding into executive session?
Aye.
Aye.